Hello, this is the Bible in fewer words. We are Carol and Steve Wells. This is episode 157, 2 Chronicles, chapters 1 through 16. If you enjoy this podcast and the Skeptic's Annotated Bible website, consider supporting us at patreon.com/BFW. Martin Watkinson composed and performed the music for the beginning and the end of our shows. Thanks, Martin. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Carol.
We're doing a lot of chapters today.
Yeah, we are.
But we're not going to do 2 Chronicles in one episode like we did 1 Chronicles.
Yeah, 2 Chronicles is 36 chapters, and it's just too much. It's also too much for us to keep in our heads all at one time. It covers a lot of ground, right? 1 Chronicles started with Adam, the very beginning of the world, and went all the way to David. So 2 Chronicles begins with Solomon.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going to start today.
Okay. And so the end of Chronicles takes us to where?
2 Chronicles, I think, is going to take us to the Babylonian captivity.
All right. 2 Chronicles, chapter 1.
Yeah, and we're not going to cover that. Chapter 1 through 11, we've already discussed in previous episodes. 133 through 136 cover the same material as the first 11 chapters of 2 Chronicles.
Are you telling me we're not going to talk about them at all today?
Not
Except
really.
saying...
We'll just kind of mention that what it talks about is Solomon. Mm-hmm. And only certain things about Solomon. You remember how selective the chronicler is?
Yes.
There are things he does not discuss. Like he doesn't talk about what Solomon's instructions that David gave him
of you got to kill this person.
Yeah, he didn't give David's hit list. Didn't talk about Adonijah. Remember Adonijah wanted Abishag?
Oh, yeah.
And
he said, how dare you?
And then he was going to be king, right? And
yeah.
Adonijah was going to be king. And so Solomon had to kill him. Doesn't talk about that. Does talk about the building of the temple.
Okay.
Spends a lot of time talking about that. And
so if people want to know about those things, they can go back to episode 133 to episode 136.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things that it leaves out is probably the most famous story about Solomon.
Oh, the baby splitting.
Yeah, the 2 prostitutes and a baby.
Huh.
Doesn't talk about that.
Wow. Because, yes, that is the one thing people know about Solomon.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we're done with those chapters, 1 through 11, do we go forward with chapter 12?
Well, in chapter 10, that's where we have the rebellion against Rehoboam.
Are we going to say that name like that?
We used to call him Reho.
Yeah, Reho sounds good.
Yeah, so that's the son of Solomon. It's the only child of Solomon. He had 1,000 wives, 700 wives, and 300 concubines, but he only had one child that we know of, the son Rehoboam, Reho.
Uh-huh.
And so he's going to become king.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier for him because he didn't have a bunch of other sons that he had to fight with to see who was going to be king.
Yes.
Yeah.
Reho, what is it that we know about Reho?
There's only really one thing that I remember about Reho. When he took over the kingdom, there was
his dad died?
After his dad died, there was a problem. There was kind of a little bit of rebellion or concern about how he was going to govern.
His subjects didn't like him?
Well, they were taxed pretty heavily, I guess, to build the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't like that, and so they were complaining about it. And Reho, he asked his advisors, what should I do about this?
Uh-huh.
And the old guys said, well, you should be nice. Talk nicely to them and maybe drop their taxes a bit. I'm not sure they actually said that, but he said, go easy on them.
Uh-huh.
But the younger advisors said, no, don't do that. Tell them that your little finger will be thicker than your father's loins.
Loins.
Yeah. So, we kind of talked about what that might mean, but
yes.
In the end, it kind of is, I think, what it sounds like. Right?
and you're avoiding that word. His little finger would be bigger than his dad's penis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does sound a little bit weird.
Very weird. He decided not to actually use that.
Little finger.
Well, he didn't use the expression, the little finger. He didn't use that comparison, but he
Uh-huh.
did say, I'm going to be tough on you.
Yeah.
And so because of that, the kingdom split. And so now we have the northern kingdom is going to go with Jeho.
Oh, this is where it splits.
This is where it splits. All over this little finger incident.
Okay, so where does Jeho come from?
Well, remember there was a prophet that said that you're going to take 10 of the tribes.
Oh, yeah. The other guy's going to take 2.
The kingdom of Judah is going to include Judah. Then also it looks like Benjamin is part of that too.
Okay.
And then the northern 10 tribes are going to go with
Jeho.
Jeho.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's where we are here. And so in verse 21 of chapter 11, it says something that it wasn't in the account in 1 Kings that I thought was interesting. And it says, Reho loved Maacah, the daughter of Absalom, more than all of his other wives. And then it says, kind of in parentheses, Reho, Solomon's son, had 18 wives and 60 concubines.
That's a lot of concubines.
Yeah, not nearly as many as his father had. Right?
Yeah.
But he had 28 sons and 60 daughters.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's also not really possible. The reason I say it's not possible is having children is a lot like flipping a coin.
Uh-huh.
You 50% probability of having a male or a female, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But yet he has 28 sons and 60 daughters. Now, you wouldn't have a fair coin if you flipped it and you got 28 heads and 60 tails.
Yeah.
So the probability of that is pretty much 0.
Okay.
But that's what he had.
All right.
And so he wins the prize of having the most children of any man in the Bible.
Oh, does he?
Yeah. Among Christians, they call it the quiver fill movement. You want to have a happy man is a man who has his quiver filled. Like arrows, a lot of arrows.
Yes.
His quiver filled with children.
Ah.
Yeah, so Reho, would win the quiverful prize.
Yes. It sounds like it.
Yeah. I think to the chronicler, a man who has a lot of wives and children shows that he's strong and he has God's approval. That's the main thing.
All right. Is there any more new information in these chapters?
Yeah, there's some stuff here that actually is in 1 Kings, but I left out, so I'm including it here. It was just a very small little thing that I thought wasn't very important. It's given greater emphasis in 2 Chronicles.
Okay.
And so I'm giving it here in chapter 12. You want to read that?
Sure. Chapter 12. Reho and everyone in Israel disobeyed God's laws. So God sent Shishak, the king of Egypt, to destroy them. Shishak had 1,200 chariots, 60,000 horsemen, and more soldiers than could be numbered. He conquered the cities of Judah and came to Jerusalem.
Shemaiah, Reho's prophet, came to him and said, "This is what God says. You have forsaken me, so I sent Shishak to destroy you."
So King Reho and the princes humbled themselves and said, "God is righteous."
God saw that they humbled themselves, so the word of God came to Shemaiah, saying, "They've humbled themselves, so I won't destroy them. I'll make them Shishak's slaves instead."
Really?
Yeah.
So Shishak came to Jerusalem and took all the treasures in God's house and in the king's house, along with Solomon's gold shields.
Because Reho humbled himself, God didn't completely destroy him. And things in Judah went well.
But Reho did evil because he didn't seek God. Reho died, and Abijah, his son, became king of Judah.
That's kind of a new story that I didn't tell in 1 Kings, and it really wasn't given the detail that we have here.
Ah, I wonder where the chronicler got his additional information.
Yeah. Well, he liked big numbers, as we'll see in the next chapter.
All right. So chapter 13. There was a war between Abijah of Judah and Jero of Israel. Abijah had 400,000 chosen men. Jero had 800,000 mighty men of valor. The men of Judah cried out to God, while the priests blew their trumpets. And God smote Jero and the men of Israel, killing 500,000 chosen men.
Yeah, 500,000 guys died. That's really amazing because, a relatively small country living long ago.
Yes.
You think their populations would be pretty small. You know how many U.S. soldiers died in World War II?
No.
About 400,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was a lot of guys died in
A lot
that
of
war.
guys.
Uh-huh.
Verse 20. And then God killed Jeroboam.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I included that, but I did.
But Abijah waxed mighty, married 14 wives, and fathered 22 sons and 16 daughters.
When you wax mighty, that kind of things happens to you. You marry a lot of wives and you have a lot of kids.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay, chapter 14. Abijah died, and his son Asa became king of Judah. Asa had an army with 300,000 men with spears from Judah, and 280,000 mighty men with bows from Benjamin. They were all men of valor. So you see how the Judah and Benjamin,
Yes.
those two tribes, are fighting together as they're part of Judah.
Uh-huh. So they're fighting Israel.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this case, they're going to be fighting the Ethiopians.
Yeah. So Zerah, the Ethiopian, had an army of 1 million men with 300 chariots.
As Asa went out to fight him, he said to God, "Help us fight against these guys."
All these guys.
All these guys, yeah.
So God killed the Ethiopians, and Asa's army smote all the surrounding cities, for the fear of the Lord came upon them and took all their stuff.
So he killed a million Ethiopians. I mean, there probably weren't a million people that lived in Ethiopia at the time, but he killed a million. There's only one other thing that I'm going to mention from these chapters in Second Chronicles, and that's in chapter 16. It mentions that Asa had a foot disease, and that was mentioned as well in 1 Kings.
Oh, yes.
But here it says that God was kind of upset with him.
Why?
Because he didn't rely on God to fix his foot disease. He relied on physicians.
Oh.
Yeah, so God doesn't like it. At least he didn't like it when Asa
When you go to a doctor.
went to a doctor instead of just asking him to help.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he died.
Oh. It's about a 50-50 chance if you ask God to help. He'll either kill you or, maybe save you, but kill you later.
Yeah, but don't be asking those physicians.
No.
Don't go to a doctor. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the end of Second Chronicles.
Well,
the first half of Second.
Right. We're going to cover the next, 20 chapters or so in the next episode.
All right. Thanks for doing this research for us, Steve.
Sure.
Bye-bye, listeners.
Bye.